Alrighty, and we are back. College Football Podcast number 8. I'm going to get into this one pretty quickly with a quick introduction here. Just something to say at the very beginning. For those of you who were at Carolina in Econ 101 with Dr. Staub, you know what I'm talking about or about to mention here. Got that midterm coming up on Tuesday. Should be a good one. Macroeconomics, I initially thought macroeconomics was a whole lot harder than microeconomics, but after studying a little bit today, not a ton, but a little bit, do some more studying tomorrow with the myriad of review sessions that we have, both with and without instructors. It doesn't feel as bad as I thought. It's very interesting, the exchange rates and how everything can play out within a bigger scale. Is interesting. But I know y'all are listening to this podcast not to hear about economics. If you would like an economics podcast, I would be more than willing to supply that to meet demand. That was supposed to be a dun-dun-dun. I'd be more than willing to supply that and get that out to y'all. Just let me know. But if not, it's fine. I know the college football is a little bit more of my area of expertise. Although I'm not horrible at economics, I'm a little bit better at college football. I'll be first one to admit that. So as we get into this podcast on tap for today, we're going to take a brief look at, actually not necessarily a brief look, a good look at the ACC, talk about a couple of the main teams within that conference. Then we're going to talk about the Big Ten, talk about Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. We're going to make a brief mention of the SEC and mainly Alabama. And then at the very end, I'm going to tell you a story, a made-up story. And I hope this will be an interactive time where I can ask rhetorical questions to y'all, make y'all think, and then I'm going to tie that in at the very end to how the college football playoff may shape up and how rankings this year could be more consequential now leading into the playoff than they ever have been. So with that, let's talk about the ACC. We're going to start off with the top team in the ACC with Clemson. I'll be honest with you. Clemson did not look incredibly great on Saturday. We weren't horrible. Certainly didn't live up to the standard that you would think would be set. But then again, when you win by 26 and you don't have your best game or even close to your best game for that matter, you may have your worst game of the season and you still win by 26. It's a pretty good day. Speaks a lot to the program, speaks a lot to the team, speaks a lot to the players. And how good this team is. Clemson will be perfectly fine, people. Anyone who out there who thinks that this interesting 26-point win to Syracuse is a problem is out of their mind. Clemson is going to be perfectly fine. Should look pretty good against Boston College. And then obviously that massive game against Notre Dame upcoming and looming in 2 weeks from now on November 7th. Should be a great one. Looking forward to that one especially. Cannot wait for that. Carolina had a great performance on Saturday, as I expected they would. Carolina football, that's an interesting program. Well, not necessarily a program, an interesting team. The only issue I have with Carolina, and this is literally the only one, Carolina's got every tool to be a really, really good team this year, and perhaps even compete, if not beat Clemson in the ACC championship. I'm telling you, the Tar Heels got everything right out in front of them. Carolina is a very good team, has a very good coach, national championship winning coach, has the facilities, has the money, and has everything ready to go. The only problem is when Carolina takes the field on Saturdays, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know if you're getting Florida State Carolina. You don't know if you're getting the Carolina you saw here. You don't know if you're going to get the Carolina that played against Syracuse or the Carolina that played against Virginia Tech. You really don't know. And even more worrisome is you don't know which side of the ball you're going to get. Is the defense going to play well? Is the defense going to play bad? Is the offense going to play well? Is the play calling going to be stagnant? You just don't know. Inconsistency is killing this team right now. And I think that is really the only thing that's hindering not only the program, but a lot of perception about Carolina. It's really tough to be perceived as one of the best teams in the country and a competitor right up there with Clemson after losing to Florida State. So again, Carolina's got everything out in front of them. There's a whole lot of good things that are happening in North Carolina right now in Chapel Hill. A bunch of stuff. The problem is you never know what you're going to see on Saturday. You're going to see a really good team who looks outstanding, has strong play calling, and is more consistent. Or are you going to see the team that stands out there and sleepwalks through the first 45 minutes of the game, then wakes up for the final quarter and loses the game. You just don't know. But if Carolina can wrap that up, it's going to be a tough out for any team to beat the Tar Heels this year. I can tell you that. Lastly, here to talk about the ACC, let's dive into Miami just a little bit. An interesting win, an ugly win for that matter. This marks the second week in a row that Miami's really had an ugly win. Now, granted, an ugly win is better than a bad loss. Let's make that very clear. Every day, I would take an ugly win over a bad loss. Or even an ugly win is better than a moral victory. Absolutely. Winning is hard. It does not come easy. And these expectations that teams should just come out every single week and blow teams out, while it may not be terribly unreasonable at the face value, you have to remember that these kids are 19, 20, 21 years old, if not 18 years old for that matter. And they have so much pressure on them put at this young age. They're not entirely developed. They got school to balance. They have all these things going on in their lives. Much less what's happening in their personal life. We're just taking into account what's happening and what we can see, basically. But we don't even see what's happening behind practice. So to expect 19 to 20-year-olds to come out and play incredibly well every single week, I think is a little bit far-fetched. I think that's what you're seeing with Miami here. Miami's a good team. Let's make no mistake about it. Miami's a very good team. I don't know if it's a top 5 level team, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Miami finish up around 10, maybe 9 in that top 10, especially if they can get a bowl win. The Canes can get a bowl win. That would be a huge step in the right direction, obviously coming off that really, really bad season last year. If Manny Diaz can turn this program around a little bit more and go to a bowl game, win a bowl game, a solid one right there. Even with the loss to Clemson, Miami's still a very good team. And a lot of people wrote them off after that game, and rightfully so with the society we live in and the landscape of college football right now. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Miami's still a really good team, and that Carolina-Miami game should be very good on December 5th. I'll be looking forward to that one. Let's go a little bit farther up north. Let's talk about the Big Ten really quick here. Ohio State, to start off with, the flagship of the Big Ten, looked really, really good. Now, there are some holes in the defense. There are some problems. The defensive line is not as good, but when you lose Chase Young, you can't really expect a lot there. And the secondary did have some gaps in it as well. But when you lose Jeffrey Okudah, when you lose Chase Young and Jeffrey Okudah to the number 2 and the number 3 pick, respectively, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Those are two unbelievable talents that are going to be hard to replace with any team, even with a team that recruits as well as Ohio State does, seemingly up there with Georgia and Alabama every single year in recruiting. It's just almost impossible to replace those types of talents year in and year out. But you know what? It doesn't really matter when you have Justin Fields at quarterback and you're putting up 52 basically in their sleep. Now, I know Nebraska wasn't the greatest team ever, but you don't have to play the greatest team ever to realize that you're a really, really good team. If people shouldn't expect Ohio State to play a caliber of Clemson, Alabama, don't even put Michigan in there because they're not. That's the problem. There's only 2 other good ones. You can't expect Ohio State to play top 5 teams every single week. A vast majority of college football schedules don't line up that way. We'll be lucky if we see if a regular season has maybe 2 or 3 top 5 matchups on it. It happens very rarely, although we usually did get one every single year. But outside of that, you don't see a lot. One a year is certainly not that many. But with Justin Fields at the helm and that offense rolling, Ohio State's a really, really good team, and they're only going to get better from here. That's the scary part. They put up 52 on Saturday, and they're only getting better from there. The Buckeyes are going to be really, really good this year. Michigan, we're going to dive a little bit to the team into Michigan and the khakis and the blue. Go Big Blue, whatever that is. Michigan played well. I'm not going to lie. Michigan did play well. They looked pretty good against Minnesota, and I think that's a good Minnesota team. I actually think that win will appreciate as we go on through the year, or as we go on through the year for that matter, the season, because I think Minnesota's going to turn out to be a little bit of a better team than maybe people have taken from this game. I think Minnesota will be the Big Ten's only playing eight games, so I say probably 6 win, maybe 5-6 win team. If they can get to a bowl game, that'll be huge. or if they can win the bowl game, I should say. They're going to get to the bowl game. If they can win a bowl game, that'll be big. I do think Minnesota's a little bit better team, though, and Michigan had a good win, and they should be commemorated for that. However, don't even start with the Michigan rhetoric. No, this is not the year. No, Jim Harbaugh's not beating Ohio State. Don't even start with it. Don't, please, for the love of God, please, people, do not fall into the trap that you have given yourself every single year for the last 4 years, 5 years. Don't do it, people. It's not worth it. Because here's what's going to happen. Michigan's going to go into Ohio State. They'll probably be 7-0. Ohio State will be the same. College Game Day will be there. Maybe even the 5-hour. Remember that there was the 5-hour College Game Day in 2016? Everyone will be there. It'll be the most hyped game of the century. Oh my gosh, the game of the century. 2 versus 3, 1 versus 5, whatever it is. I don't know. And Michigan will lose by 40. That's just the case. Michigan's not a bad team. Okay? They're not. But they are nowhere close to Ohio State right now. In multiple aspects. But especially coaching. Ryan Day's a great coach. The program at Ohio State's better. In the moment, they have better athletes. Ohio State's just the better team, frankly. And that does not mean that Michigan's bad. But Ohio State is just that much better. Now, I'm going to finish it off here with Penn State and Indiana. This was a crazy game. Maybe the craziest game of the entire year. I was watching that game, and I saw Indiana have the incompletion on 4th down, turn the ball over to Penn State on like the 15 or so. And I looked at my mom and said, okay, this game's over. We're going to turn off. We're going to watch college football scoreboard before the night game come on. Of course, that was Michigan and Minnesota. And I look down at my phone 10 minutes later, and I see they're in overtime. And I'm like, what in the world happened? Where did I miss this? Hold on. Something went drastically wrong here because I don't know what happened, but something did. And I went back and of course, you can find the clips on Twitter. I go back and watch the clips on Twitter. So for those of you who didn't see the game, obviously I said earlier, Penn State turned the ball over with like 1:50 left. Just under 2 minutes. And Penn State, instead of kneeling the ball, decides to run it. Well, when they decide to run the ball, Indiana, the defense, just stands still. And the Penn State guy runs right through, stutters at like the 1 yard line, thinking, should I go in, should I not, should I go in, and goes in the end zone. So then they go up 8. Well, Indiana gets the ball and drives right down the field and scores, gets the 2-point conversion and forces it into overtime. So all Penn State had to do was kneel the ball. The game would have been over. Instead, they ran the ball, scored. But at the end of the day, your defense has got to be able to get the stop when they need, and especially on the 2-point conversion. They could get either Indiana forces overtime and ends up winning the game in overtime on an unbelievable 2-point conversion. A great play. Was he down short? Maybe. Perhaps. I think you can make a very good argument he was down beforehand. Was there conclusive evidence to prove that he was down short? Could you absolutely, without a shade of a doubt, say it? Absolutely not. And if that's the case, you got to go with the call on the field. And at the end of the day, Penn State should have never been that close with Indiana. That is a bad loss regardless. Even if you want to say the call on the field was wrong, Penn State should have never been in that game with Indiana. That game should have been put away in the first half. Penn State is that much better of a team and a program than Indiana right now. It's certainly an embarrassing loss for James Franklin. And even worse, that loss took off so much hype going into this week with the Ohio State at Penn State on Halloween. Everything that was going to be amazing. Whiteout, the whole 9 yards. And now it's just, it's still going to be a good game. It'll still have a lot of hype. Still, there'll be, college game is going to be there. People will watch. But it's just not going to be the same with that loss because now instead of Ohio State playing an undefeated team, they're playing a team that lost to Indiana. And that loss just changes the perception of everything. But especially within the perception of Penn State. Quickly here, now we're going to talk about the SEC and Alabama's Pirate victory. I'm not going to lie. I'm really, really sad that Jalen Waddle's done for the season. I hate that for him. He's one of the most electrifying players in college football, no doubt. Very, very good talent. Incredibly fast. Number one wide receiver for Alabama, and now he's gone. So Alabama dominates against Tennessee. Has I think it was like 30 point, may have been a 40 point, honestly. I'm pretty sure it was 30 something though. And Jalen Waddle goes down, obviously, on the opening kickoff. And it's not going to affect him against Tennessee, okay? Alabama will probably run through the rest of their schedule. They're going to beat Auburn, I can tell you that. Don't even think Auburn's a challenge. Auburn's not a challenge. But, and I think they're going to run through Georgia too. I think Alabama can beat Georgia without Jalen Waddle. The problem is when they play really good teams. And Georgia, let me rephrase it. The problem is when they play great teams. Georgia's a good team, a really good team for that matter. But they're not elite level just yet. And, you know, that loss of Waddle, while it may not kill Alabama's offense, if you take away a team's number one wide receiver, the offense is going to be affected regardless. Even with a team as talented and as deep as Alabama, you take away that guy, you take away any team's number one, and obviously they're going to be affected somewhat. And so it may harm Alabama a little bit down the road. I guess we'll just have to see. But really, I hate seeing Jalen Waddle go down. But Bama still cruises to a victory and a good win nonetheless against Tennessee. Now, this last part here, last segment of the episode, I'm going to take it very slowly, okay? I want you, and this is going to be an interactive exercise. If you're laying in your bed watching this, hopefully you're driving your car, I don't know. I make these podcasts, there's no visual on the screen, so you can listen to this while you're in the shower, maybe working out, driving, I don't care. I mean, I hope you're not sitting down, because I know I'm about as boring as it gets. And sitting down and listening to me could be potential. I mean, they ought to put me in the speakers of torture chambers, and I think they would get the prisoners to confess to whatever they want, because God, sometimes I feel like I am the most boring human on the planet, but maybe I'm not. So this is gonna be an interactive part, and it's gonna be a story. Okay, so for all of you out there, okay, I want you to think about your favorite restaurant. What is it? What's your favorite restaurant? Could be as expensive as you want. Could be as cheap as you want. It's probably expensive, let's be real. There's no shame in that. If you're here in the North Carolina area where I am, maybe it's the Angus Barn, maybe an Outback, Fleming Steakhouse, maybe like Uncle Julio's, maybe if it's a Las Palmas Mexican restaurant. You're in Wake Forest, maybe it's Wakefield Tavern, one of those places. Nice restaurant, right? Doesn't have to be super expensive, but can be expensive, right? And then I want you to compare that to McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's, okay? And I want you to think about it, okay? Think about your favorite restaurant and compare that to Burger King, Wendy's, any fast food restaurant. Think about your favorite fast food restaurant, basically. Why, in a given year, will you eat the food from the fast food restaurant rather than your favorite restaurant? I want you to think about that. The answer is pretty much quite obvious. If you, I mean, you don't have to do a lot of thinking about it. The price of your favorite restaurant is probably 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 times larger than the fast food restaurant. You know, you go to McDonald's, you get a 2 cheeseburger meal, it runs you about $5.50, maybe $6. You go to Outback and you get a really nice steak with 2 nice sides or something like that. Maybe you go on a date with your girlfriend, wife, I don't know. And or a boyfriend. If I have any girls listening to this, I don't think I do, but if I do, that's good too. Maybe you go on a date with your significant other, and that'll run you $20, maybe $25, $30 if you get a blooming onion or something like that. Maybe if it's more. I haven't been to Outback in forever, but you think about it, the price difference, right? It takes more out of you. You have less money after you leave there, right? It costs so much more. Okay? So at the end of the day, you'll eat at McDonald's more. And that'll be the 1 seed, right? Because at the end of the day, you know you can eat at McDonald's more times. You know you can eat at Burger King more times. You know you can get more food at Burger King. You can get more calories at the end of the day. You can get a better unit rate. Maybe a drink. Maybe a slushie if you go to Sonic. I think even Burger King has freezies now. But you can get a slushie if you go to Sonic. You know? This is what we're seeing in the college football playoff. Right now in the landscape of college football, you have 3 teams. You have Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State. Put them in any order you want. They don't have to be in that respective order. I think you can make a really, really good case for Ohio State being at number 1. I think you can make a great case for Clemson being at number 1. I think you can make maybe the best case of all for Alabama being number 1. I still think Clemson's the number 1 team in the country, but my point is you could make a case about any one of those teams being number 1, or 2, or 3. But who's 4? When you look at it, who is number 4 in the landscape? Or who is going to be number 4? Who has the potential to be number 4? Okay? Georgia, I believe, is number 5 right now. Okay? They're going to lose to Alabama twice. They're going to be done. Notre Dame's number 4. Okay? Let's say they lose to Clemson, which right now that's what Vegas says, and I believe Clemson has like an 86% chance of victory, which I know is not. I mean, they don't play the games on paper for a reason. The game is played for a reason, you know. But let's say Clemson wins. Ohio State, or Notre Dame, not Ohio State. Notre Dame loses. Who's after them? Oklahoma State? Do you really trust Oklahoma State to go undefeated? No. Cincinnati? Group of 5 team? And when you look at how this playoff could shape up, you're going to have the top 3 and then 4. So rankings this year matter more than anything else. You know, with the way the college football playoff is set up right now, 1 plays 4 and 2 plays 3. So think about that. Think about if you're Clemson and Alabama gets number 1. You got to go through Ohio State again. A team that's literally had the score of the Fiesta Bowl up in their locker room, or maybe it's their weight room, or both. Every day since that loss, you got to play them again in the semifinal. Maybe Ohio State's won. You got to play Alabama in the semifinal. You're going to give Nick Saban a month to prepare for you. A month. You can say right now, Nick Saban gets a month to prepare for anyone. That offense will not do a thing. Ever. The only team that's been the exception to that is 2014 Ohio State, and that's when Ezekiel Elliott literally ran wild. I mean, NFL running back. My point is, for those of you who are listening out there, you go to the fast food restaurant because it takes less out of you. You don't lose as much. It doesn't set you back as far. You may prefer to go to the nice restaurant. You may prefer for your team to play in the better game. You might prefer to see your team get challenged, right? You want to see a good game at the end of the day. But it'll set you back a whole lot more. I'm going to lay it out here plain and simple for y'all. I'm making a bold prediction. Whoever the number 1 team is going into the college football playoff, who is released as the number 1 on that selection Sunday, is going to win the national championship. It is virtually impossible in my mind for Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State to play each other and then play the other one again in 1 week and win both of those games. That is about as hard as it gets. And I'm being honest, I don't know how that works. Because the number 1 team in the country is going to have a cakewalk to the playoff, or to the national championship. If things hold up right now. I can tell you right now, if Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State were to play Oklahoma State, the line would probably be around 21. If we're just being honest. If Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State were to play Notre Dame, the line would be at least at 14. And I believe that's what it is right now for Clemson, Notre Dame. But as the season shapes up, that gap might elongate. If Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State were to play Cincinnati, the line would probably be at 20. Maybe a little bit less, because Cincinnati's pretty good. If you take any of the combination of Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson, you pick two of those teams, and you put them up against each other, I guarantee you the line's less than 6. It's probably around 5 or 4, maybe 3, if you get Clemson, Ohio State. The number one team in the nation this year is winning the national championship, and rankings have mattered this year perhaps more than any time in the past. Because of the three-legged race that we have right now in college football, how there are 3 dominant teams in the landscape, this is what we see. And it's not anyone's fault. But right now you have 3 teams that are head and shoulders above everyone else right now. Will one of those teams be dethroned? I hope so. I hope it's not Clemson, but I hope so. Is Michigan the one to do it? Absolutely not. Is Georgia the one to do it? Nope. But teams do lose. This is college football. Nothing's predictable. I can guarantee you each one of these teams, each one of these 3 teams is going to get the best shot by every single team that they play this year. No question about it. And maybe Ohio State will drop a game. Maybe Clemson will. Heck, we didn't look too great on Saturday. Maybe Alabama will lose one. Who knows? Maybe they'll drop one to LSU. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. You never know. But the number one team in the country is going to have a significantly easier run to the playoff or run to the national championship than 2 or 3. And that's pretty sad if you think about it. This does not call for a widening of the college football playoff. No, we should not expand to 8. That's a completely different conversation. I'm planning on making a podcast episode about that conversation with one of my good friends. You know who you are if you're listening to this. But we will do that someday. But it's just the way it's the nature of the beast. It's what you're going to have this year. So with that being said, that's going to conclude our time in this episode. Thank you all very much for listening if you've gotten to this point. If you would like for me to talk about anything else in the next podcast episode, please drop these suggestions in the comments, and I will make sure to attend to them accordingly. And I look forward to that. And with that being said, I will see you here next Sunday after another great week of college football, hopefully next week. I'll give you an update on how the midterm went and everything of that nature, and I look forward to seeing you all back here. Have a good one.